Hey friends, welcome to this week's episode of The Blaze Bell Show. Today we have the vivacious, bright, and magnetic Lauren Heath, aka the Empath-preneur. Today Lauren shares with us her career journey from social services to dog walking to the legacy that she's building today. She also tells us how she overcame an abusive relationship and a painful divorce to step in to the empowered space that she's in now. This episode is full of laughter and joy as we share more of our personal paths through healing and creating a life of our dreams. Today's episode is brought to you by my favorite Granola Gangstas, Elevated Oats, baby. This female-owned business is bringing us granola that is gluten-free, dairy-free, low sugar, and made with real fruits and veggies. Support this amazing crew while you elevate your next adventure at elevatedoats.com. Now let's dive into this week's episode. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's show. I am here with Lauren, the Empath-preneur. I have been following you for a while now, and I just love the work you do, your energy, your pink hair. I'm obsessed with like colorful hair. I just love seeing what you're doing. So thank you for being here today to share more with us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I've been following you for a while too, and I just love seeing your journey and how you have this like large spectrum of things that you do and are good at. I think it's great.
Thank you. Yeah, I hear a lot about like narrow down what you're doing, and it's just hard. I'm like, but that, and look at that shiny thing, and look at that sparkle over there. We have to do all the things.
Anyway, right. Like I want to coach, I want to podcast, I want to sing, I'm going to do all the things.
I mean, life is short. Yeah, just try. So I think we got connected through the Slay coach, Jamie King, she's just a blast, like what an energy ball. So I'd love to hear from you. This podcast is really centered on healing and healing tools. But I also have had a lot of female entrepreneurs on who also share about their business. And so I'd love to get a mix of that from you today, because I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs have gone through a lot to get to where they are today. And in my experience of who I've personally talked to, especially the females, there seems to be a big like empowerment journey that happens to bring you to this place. Because I know that being an entrepreneur takes such an incredible amount of discipline, tenacity, willpower. You just have to be humble and confident at the same time. It's not easy. It's a lot easier to work for someone else. But the reward for creating your own things, I know, is so epic. So I just think it's really exciting to talk to entrepreneurs. So I'd love to just start though with your kind of background, like what led you to the work you're doing today. And if there's anything you want to share with this audience that can help anyone feel like they're not alone and can connect with you in a different way too.
Yeah, no, it's totally true. You're spot on. It's like as entrepreneurs, we have all these different things. So it's like, if you would have told me like 8 years ago or 8.5 years ago now that like I would be having my own business, and, just having so much like control and freedom and just building this, like, I'm not necessarily trying to build an empire, but I'm trying to build a legacy, I would have been like, what are you talking about? So I first got into like the business world. It kind of happened accidentally. I used to actually I was a social worker. And so right out of college, I actually worked at a domestic violence shelter. And so I worked the overnight shift there. And that shelter, at the time, this was back in 2010, at the time, that was actually the only shelter in Virginia and only one of 9 in the entire country that also had a shelter for pets, because there's like a really high correlation, as you might imagine, of like, if someone, would abuse a human, like they're most likely would also abuse a pet. So people often don't leave, with intimate partner violence or domestic violence, they don't leave these relationships because they don't want to leave their pets behind. So I was just kind of floored that like, wow, like this whole organization, like, exists to try to help people, leave these situations and to do it in a way that's like safe and, empowering and all these different things. So I just started doing like more research on like the human animal bond. And after a couple of years in social work, I got really burnt out because I'm an empath. And at the time I was not good at, there was a lot of healing to be done. I myself have my own experiences And, I didn't know how to kind of separate the two. So I actually jumped into starting a dog walking and pet sitting business. So that was like my first like dip into like the small business world. And it's kind of funny because like I actually didn't consider myself like a small business owner or an entrepreneur for a while until like maybe like year 3, like when people ask like, hey, like what do you do? I was like, oh, I'm a dog walker. And I didn't think about like there's all these things that you're doing. Like this is a business. It's not a hobby. Like I'm not doing it for my health, although walking dogs did, a lot of exercise is good for your health. So yeah, so I did that from 2013 to the end of 2020. So I guess if you just like fast forward to 2020, like at the beginning of the year, I was like, okay, this is going to be like our biggest year yet. Like we're going to just like I just got a new website. I had just invested in new like legal contracts. Like I had done all the things like reinvesting back into my business. And then the pandemic happened and nobody needed dog walking or pet sitting because everyone was at home.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So it sucked. It sucked. Like so our numbers were down like 98%. It was crazy.
Oh,
So that was really tough. I was able to kind of, again, like you're saying, as an entrepreneur, like you have to be like courageous and brave and risk takers and whatever. I was able to, keep my team on board, thankfully, due to like getting like a PPP loan and all this different stuff. But at the end of the day, like I kind of realized that, oh, like this isn't really making me very happy anymore. Like I loved building something from the ground up. Like I fell in love with the business part of it, not necessarily like the dog walking pet care stuff. Huge pet lover, but it was like, it just kind of wasn't for me anymore. So that's when while I was kind of processing all of this, that's when I started this business, Empath-preneur. And so I started kind of coaching and just kind of figuring out like what I exactly wanted to do. And I made the like brave and stupid decision to like shut down my pet care business at the end of 2020 and just basically go all in on this business. And
well,
here
that's
I am
brave.
a year later, still standing. So yeah, it's so funny. Like closing, you're talking about like healing and stuff like that. Like there's so many things that I've healed from, but actually closing down my business that I had like created and poured literal blood, sweat, and tears into was like that required a lot of healing too, which was very interesting and not something that I really expected at all.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes we end up like needing to grieve different types of things like that. And I felt like having to grieve relationships that I was the one who like left, and it was the right decision and I was relieved, but also like there was a grieving process that had to happen. And I think any kind of big change like that, I mean, that doesn't surprise me.
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah, I definitely had to grieve this. It was a loss, yes, it was a business. It wasn't a person,
Yeah.
but it was a loss. I built these relationships with these clients for, 7 years. Some were with me from the very beginning. So, but, walking away from that and stepping full on into like coaching, I was able to kind of bring like my social work skills, like kind of back into play because now I do, coaching and like social media mentorship. So I get to work with people one-on-one and, coaching, like there's a lot of feelings involved in that. So I finally feel like I'm like, oh, like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. So it feels good.
Oh, I love that. So, and I like seeing too that kind of, I think it's really fun to look back on our journey. Like, how did I get here and the certain things I'm doing? And also like, ooh, what's going to happen next? I can't wait to see that. But listening to you, diving into social work, and my dad has been in that field his whole career. And so, and I've had foster siblings too when I was in high school. And so that's kind of was a big part of my life, just kind of watching that system from a distance. But I know that there's just so much burnout, and it's so hard, and like compassion fatigue, and I think it's it's just difficult for us. And especially if anything we're witnessing is triggering something from our own past that maybe we haven't ever even looked at, especially if we're going into something when we're young like that. So anyway, to hear your journey from like super intense work, then taking a step back, being with animals, which is like, you get their unconditional love now and play, and also getting all those seeds planted of starting a business, and how cute, like not even really realizing it. And I think that too with, people that are like, oh, I'm a babysitter, or even for me, like I'm a singer. Is that a job? Like, yeah, because I get to make contracts and I negotiate and I give us raises and we have this. And I loved that part. And that kind of opened me up too. Like, ooh, I just love a good contract. Nerd,
Hashtag things entrepreneurs say.
Right. So I just think that's really cool that you probably had like a healing phase while bringing in some new business skills and then moving into where you are now, and watching like how you navigated the pandemic, which what a nightmare. I mean, so many of us went through all kinds of things, whether it was personal, business wise, and when you have a team too that's relying on you, like that must have just been pretty heartbreaking, I'm sure. Ups and downs. Yeah. So you made it through, you're strong, you got this. So I'd love to hear, the work you're doing today. And you said you're doing coaching. So can you talk a little bit more? I know I've seen like you have some group coaching programs, and I feel like you have all kinds of things at this point. But when you're working with people, number one, like what are you doing? But number two, I'd love to hear how you're protecting your own energy, and you call yourself an empath. You've experienced that compassion fatigue from taking in too much of other people's energy. So as a coach, especially with one-on-one, what are you doing to keep yourself in a positive space?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first part of that is, so I'm a marketing coach for introverts. So I help introverted entrepreneurs and other entrepreneurs too. Like I work with kind of quirky people, but we're all, kind of quirky and eccentric entrepreneurs create standout brands. So I try to help them figure out, okay, like what are these like parts of myself that I can integrate into my brand and really use that to market myself online. So, we focus on like social media a lot. So that's what I do. And yeah, I mean, with coaching, especially now, like I just, the more I get into one-on-one, I use Voxer a lot. So, we get to be really like high touch with my clients, which is great. But I definitely, even in the past like few weeks or so, I kind of had to like kind of step back. I was like, wait, I feel myself just like, because I would just keep pouring and pouring and pouring because I love it. It feels so good. It's also kind of like our own in a way, like you almost, I think part of me also does it because I'm like, ooh, this feels good. So I want to keep doing it. But then, of course you get to a point where you're like, wait a minute, like I need to pour back into me. So I've had to kind of create some boundaries, after like a certain time at night, like, I put my phone like away, like on the counter, making sure that I'm really having quality time with my partner and my pets. Yeah, walking, it's so funny. Walking has gotten me through so much. It got me through a divorce. It got me through like so many different things in my life, but I just walk a lot. Not quite as much as I used to, but so, I'll feel like stuck sometimes, or maybe even really drained. So I'm like, oh, okay, time to go for a walk. Like my coach calls it like meditation in motion, which I really like that. So I do a lot of walking and journaling, of course, all those kinds of things. But, as far as like, I don't know, I can be a very like strategic, systematic person. So I figured out like, okay, in order for me to pour into like my people fully, like I schedule on like certain days of the week, like Tuesday, Thursdays are my days where I like pour into others.
Okay.
And then on like, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays are days when I do like things like this, or I work, on my own business and pour into myself. So having things kind of split up that way really works well for me because, even if I have a long day of coaching on like a Tuesday or Thursday, I know like, tomorrow I'll get to rest, or, what I mean? You can just be a little bit more intentional about my time and how I'm using that.
Yeah, I think that is huge. And I was going to ask you about that, especially I know exactly what you mean with Voxer. I've had coaches that I hired that would chat me up all the time on there, which was amazing. And then I also use it with my clients, but I feel like boundaries and, figuring out boundaries is its whole own journey for each of us. And I think we all learn it the hard way. We're like, oh, that was too much. Oh, I didn't like that. So I love that you're talking about, these off and on days. And I've tried to do that too. I still think it's hard. I'll feel like I have something set and then, just kind of, it's tough. But I think that that's really cool and it makes perfect sense. So you also were talking about walking and journaling. So walking, and I like that because it also doesn't sound like so much pressure. Like I had a hard time for a long time. I was following all these amazing coaches, but they all were like, every morning I wake up at 5 a.m. and I do an hour-long thing, and it was like, I meditate and then I work out really hard and then I do breath work and then I journal and then I blah. And I'm like, that's just so hard.
It is a lot. And people talk so much about morning routine, which don't get me wrong. Like I love routines. Like I like to have a routine. I think we as humans all like routines, but feeling like, okay, like I used to actually, I think it was a couple months ago, I created a habit tracker and I wrote out all the things I want to do in the morning and the evening. And I did it for like 2 days. I did most of them. And then I just was like I was just so burnt out trying to do all the things. So now I I know in my head what those things are. And I'm like, okay, I can do one thing on that list each morning or each day, even just in the daytime, like I'm going to consider that a win. And if I have more spoons or more bandwidth for more, great. But it's just like, I think I'm concentrating more on like having small wins or these small pockets of like care throughout the day versus like I'm not a get up at 6 a.m. and start doing all these things kind of girl. And I don't think I ever will be. So it's just like,
yeah. Well, and I even, especially working in the music industry, there are so many night owls. And I was always like such a nerd because I was a morning person. And I'm like, the gig starts at 10. Oh shit. I'm like, I'd be dancing and I'd like turn around towards the band and be like, oh, like yawning. Like I can't. But it's really fun to like see those people and see night owls who just at night they start to get their energy, and that's when they are creative, whereas that's when my brain turns off, but when I wake up with all those juices flowing, so I think also just figuring out who we are and when our energy is there, making the most of it. But also with a lot of the people I was following at the time, I realized none of them had kids. And I had 2 toddlers at that time. And so, I woke up to like, mom, just craziness every day. And this applies to people with or without kids, but I read a book called You Have 4 Minutes to Heal Your Life. And it was all about these 4-minute meditations. And it's by Rebecca Barucki, Beck's Life. Anyway, she's got 5 kids. And she was like, I can't do these long things. I will go into my car in the driveway and I'll meditate for 4 minutes while my 5 kids are in there doing God knows what. But I have to like recalibrate and get centered periodically throughout the day. And that really resonated. And so I've taken that with everything. I'm going to go on I have a cycling bike at my house now. And it's like, okay, I'm going to get on that for 5 or 10 minutes. I've got 10 minutes. Cool. And most of my meetings are on Zoom now. So like I could be totally sweaty right now. No one would know. And I've been making the most of that because it's like, I know I'll get the endorphins, just like walking. Right now it's freezing here. So walking outside isn't that fun, but getting fresh air. And, I love that. And like the baby steps, I think is just huge.
I completely agree. I think it's like I love that you said that you do it for like 5 or 10 minutes, because I think, I don't know, I used to, and I'm trying to unlearn this, have this attitude of like, oh, I don't do it like 100%. Like I just not going to do it at all. And it's like, no, like that's not the point. The point is to like start and do a little bit just to get the habit of doing whatever it is. So if it's like going to the gym for like 2 minutes and then leaving, like, cool, you went to the gym. Next time, maybe you'll stay for 5, maybe then 10 or whatever it is. It's just like, what's that habit or what is that self-care thing or that healing thing that you want to integrate into your life? And how can you do it just a little bit? So I like that 4 minutes. We all have 4 minutes at some point.
exactly. Yeah.
I've heard people talk about like meditating while they're like sitting on the toilet, like, okay, well, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. Like, you know what?
Yeah.
I like it. Go for it.
You know what? It works. It works. That's funny. Well, and you said journaling, of course. Now, I wouldn't say that's an of course. For me, journaling is so hard. And I know every time I do it, I'm so happy I did. And it was like a 5-minute thing or less, but something about getting myself to that point. So for you, is that just something that's become habitual? Do you have journal prompts? Like, what are you writing about?
I love that question. So it depends. So I have like an obsession with office supplies. So I have like several different journals and several different notebooks, and I'll kind of just like rotate depending. So I have one that's just like literally a blank notebook. And a lot of times, like, I mean, I write about my feelings, but a lot of times I just write about like what I'm going to do for the day. Sometimes I just, because I'm just like, okay, what are the things happening? And then naturally I kind of end up solving problems that I'm like getting stressed about already. So just by literally writing that out. I had another journal that I did like at night that was more like it asked questions to like reflect on my day. Because I think having prompts can be really helpful, especially if journaling is like new. Just like, I don't know what to say. Like,
Yeah.
today I did this. I also have, I haven't used it in a little while, but it's just called like a little one a day thing. And it's basically a tiny little notebook where you have it for 5 years. And so every single day you just write like one line of like something that you did. And then the next year you go back and, you look at you fill it in each day and you can compare yourself to where you were the year before.
Oh, cool.
So I'm kind of, doing that I think is really cool just so you can kind of see your progress. Like, like let's say you're like, oh, today I've recorded my, 60th episode of my podcast. And then next year, on the same day, you'd be like, oh, I'm at, 130 episodes. You're like, oh, fuck, like, wow, like come
Yeah.
so far. So
Oh, I like
there's
that.
so many different ways to do it. I think it's just a matter of just like, what outcome I think are you looking for? Like, are you looking for just like documenting your life? Are you looking to like heal and reflect on something? Are you looking to just kind of just get stuff out of your head? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I almost feel like that would be a great thing for me to start doing, just like I did with exercise, like 2 minutes a day. I'm going to set a 2-minute timer and just start writing and see what happens. And again, I think if it becomes a habit like that, then it just gets easier and easier. I also bought this pack. I love office supplies too. Like, oh my God. But I recently bought a pack of just like yellow legal pads because I get all these beautiful journals, but they're like so pretty. Like I don't have anything cool enough to like write in that. I can't write a list of like the food I ate today in that beautiful journal. Like there's too much pressure. So I've got the low pressure legal pads. I think I'm ready.
I like that low pressure legal pad. I love that. Then you have the freedom to write whatever you want.
It must be, I think it's like in movies or TV shows where you see the people scribbling and then they rip it and throw it and it's like the pile. I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway. So I have 2 more questions for you. One is, I'd love to just have you think for a minute about a woman who is you a few steps back. And that could be as far back as you would like to go. That could be, you touched on that when you worked in the domestic violence shelter, that you kind of related to some of the things, maybe it's you that was in a tough relationship, or maybe it's you starting your business journey and struggling. But I love to think of like us a few steps back and what message you would have for that person right now who's listening and they're thinking either I'm in this relationship and I don't know how to move through it, and or I'd love to be an entrepreneur and start my own business, but I'm scared, I don't know what to do. So any messages that come to you that you would love to pass on?
Oh gosh, the first thing that like instantly popped to my mind is it gets so much better. Like, this isn't it. Like, go like, so I've been, in like trigger warning, like I've experienced like rape and sexual assault. I've been in toxic, like abusive relationships. I've been, I got divorced, like, there's all the things. And it's just like, when you're in that state, whatever it is, whether it's something like that or, something else, like it's so hard to see like outside of what it is that we're experiencing, which is understandable. Like we're in this terrible situation. But it's just like here it gets so much better, and it will get so much better. And like hearing that, I think just would have, and for anyone listening that like maybe is in a situation like that, it really just gets so much better. I remember sitting at my mom. So this was about 4 years ago. Like it was the week of Thanksgiving 4 years ago. So it was very, very recent, I guess, that I just had this like 4-year anniversary of like when I like to call him my husband, because I think that sounds way cooler than ex-husband. So my husband and I like, separated, and I moved back in, with my parents, which, I'm very, very grateful that, I have the ability to do that. I'm so grateful. I remember just sitting at my parents' like kitchen table, just like sobbing uncontrollably. It was just like, my life is over. I just felt so awful. Like I couldn't see beyond this, what was in front of me. And my mom was just like, it gets so much better. Like you're going to get through this. Like you're going to be sitting here at this table 6 months from now, a year from now, 3 years from now. And you're going to be like, wow, like, I got through it. And I remember saying to her, I can't remember exactly how I said it, but I had such attitude. I was like, it's easy for you to say that because you're not experiencing it. And then now I'm just like, of course, like she was so right. And so it's just like, I posted something about that on Facebook the other day, and someone commented and was just like, like I am you 4 years ago. I was just like, you are me 4 years ago, and 4 years from now, you're going to be me, and you're going to be talking to someone who was, you know what I mean? Like there's always going to be someone. So it's just, you're in a part of the cycle that like you have to, not have to, but like you're going through this and it's going to get better. This is the hard part that this has to happen in order to get to where you're going to go.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you. I love that. And it's nice to see that reflection and reflected back to you from someone else. And yeah, that's beautiful. Okay, last thing. How can we work with you? I see the sticky notes in the background, and I follow you on Instagram, so I see when you have like new people join your groups. I love that. That also goes along with your office supply thing. Very organized. I really, really like it. So tell me, like, what are you doing right now, and how can we connect with you?
Yeah. So right now, today's literally the day my cart opened. I have a program called Big Introvert Energy, not to be confused with Big Dick Energy. It's different. Big Introvert Energy is like, embracing your quirks and your weirdness and your awkwardness or whatever it is about you, your eccentricities, maybe you're a little offbeat or a little nerdy, taking that and really embodying it and just like making that like your brand. Because I know for so long, I kept comparing myself to all these like really amazing coaches, like Jamie, for instance. She's amazing. She's so powerful. She is a force. And she's just like so extroverted and all this. And it's just like, I love that. That's not me, And so it's like hard for me to figure out, okay, like where do I fall into that mix? So that's one of the reasons why I created this program. So, but that's just kind of what I do in general. This is a group program that I have, but that's a lot of the stuff that I work with people one-on-one about, just figuring out how to like embrace those quirks and really just make that like a part of your brand. So I do one-on-one coaching, I do intensives. But yeah, you can find everything about me at laurenheath.com. I'll send it to you. You can share all.
Oh yeah, I'll make sure they have all your links. And yeah, I love it. Also, I'm excited for everyone that listens to this to hear you compare big introvert versus big dick energy. Most of them have no idea what you're talking about.
I know. I was talking to a friend and I was like, Big Introvert Energy. And they're like, what? Why that name? I was like, haven't you ever heard of Big Dick Energy? And then they're like, I was like, it's like that, but for introverts. So yeah, I actually have the word dick on my sales page, which was like, I was like, should I do it? I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it.
Just do it. I think we all can just loosen up a little bit these days. It's time. My God. Anyway, that's awesome. I love that. And I will make sure we know where to find you. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we wrap up today?
Oh, just 3:33 on my clock, angel numbers.
Ooh.
Thank you just so much for having me. This is so awesome. I love all the things that you're doing. And I think it's just so important to be like talking about all the issues that you are. And I think that you're just like such a great example for people who have, been through something in their life that they need to heal from. So I just really admire you. And I just think that's so great. And I love seeing, you singing and everything like that too. So I just
Yeah.
think you're great.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, and let's also see if we can add some resources for anyone who's going through toxic relationships or abuse or anything. And we'll add that in as well. So,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
all right. Well, thank you so much, Lauren. This is so good.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. I would love to hear your favorite moments from today, so come say hi over on Instagram. I'm at BlazeBellBliss. If you are ready to release what's no longer serving you and step into the powerful human you came here to be, head over to blazebell.com and use the code PODCAST for 50% off my online course, Reclaim Your Badassery. Thank you to our incredible sponsor, Elevated Oats. It is time to elevate your adventures, upgrade your health while becoming a granola gangsta, baby. Head to elevatedoats.com today. You are worthy of healing, and I am so glad you're here.